Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Can You Hear Me podcast. I'm Rob Johnson, president of Rob Johnson Communications.
And I'm Eileen Rochford, CEO of the Harbinger Group, a marketing and strategy firm. Here on Can You Hear Me, we always try to provide a solid bit of advice on communications and career advancement. Today is no different. So we know that many of you are constantly thinking about how to distinguish yourself at work and make a positive impression on your bosses and colleagues. Well, today we will dive deeper into how to stand out at work.
That's right, Eileen. A recent article on LinkedIn titled, "Is Your Boss a Horrible Person? Plus the Key to Standing Out at Work." The first part about the boss may take another episode, so we're not going to focus on that today. But we are going to focus on the part about standing out at work. Now, in this article, Simon Sinek quotes Tessa White, the author of The Job Gospel, who discusses several things that really caught our eye. One of them is not taking your job description as the gospel, pointing out that someone in HR wrote that description simply to get someone to fill the role. So don't take it so literally. And perhaps more importantly here, the article discusses White's advice about flourishing in the gap. Now, that means, quote, recognizing those opportunities at work with fresh eyes and remembering them. Then within your own sphere of influence, figuring out how to address them, unquote. And she gives some examples like listening closely to your leaders and seeking input from other departments. And so that's a really good way to start this, I think, Eileen, because we kind of tee it up with what Tessa's advice is. And she's obviously thought a lot about it, having written about it. And as we sit there and think about those gaps, like where are they? You know, everybody's kind of on the same road. Where are those little gaps that I can take advantage of and be a difference maker? And certainly listening closely to the expectations and what your leaders want, and then seeking input from other departments. That's collaborative.
It is. Those little gaps, as Tessa put it, those are the places where often, particularly early in your career, you can really distinguish yourself. So watching, keeping a close eye, listening very carefully for challenges that your team is experiencing or your whole company may be experiencing is how you can tune into what are those gaps, where are they, and then apply your own knowledge and skill set to thinking through, oh, how could I be a difference here, as you put it? I love how you said difference maker, Rob. That's perfect. That's really what you're looking for. And I personally right now, since it's May, it's, new kind of, let's call it new recruit season. Lots of folks who've just graduated from college are coming on the market and coming into new careers, particularly those in communications. We care a lot about, right? Making sure that those folks get on a good path. So this is a bit of our advice, like listen for the places where you can be a true difference maker. I've got an example of a person here on our team. We use a tool called Muckrack. Muckrack seemed to be producing not the exact results in the searches that we'd established for a key client and a key campaign that was running. And we were just having trouble figuring out why that was occurring. But frankly, there really wasn't someone on the team who had time to dig into it and figure it out. And this new professional decided to just dig into it, spend their own time, honestly, to work real closely with the representative from Muckrack. And within 3 days, the whole thing was resolved. And it would seem like something that really, wasn't critical. We weren't failing because we weren't getting the returns on the searches that we thought we would get. But what we didn't know was how much better we could be operating if we did have the right returns. And it was night and day, the difference, once they had resolved this for us. So I'll use that as an example of the type of, flourishing in the gap, like recognizing, oh, that's something that's a trouble point. This Muckrack example I just gave. Maybe I could dig into this and help, even though it's not specifically within my job description, because honestly, it wasn't within their job description, but they made a huge difference. What, a seemingly small problem went away, and that resulted in creating lots of new opportunities and successes for us. So we really appreciated that.
And I think you've also referenced to me personally, the great young professionals that work behind the scenes at Can You Hear Me, who you'll say, hey, let's think about this or try that. And then they go off on their own and they've heard what you've said and they've been creating things, some things you've asked for and some things you haven't. So the really creative problem solving skill set seems to be working there as well. It seems like that's related. That's
absolutely
great.
You
ask them to do something, they do 6 things, and you're like, oh, okay, thank you. That's you're going to be successful at whatever you do.
Yes, our listeners and people who see us on social probably know that in the very recent past, we introduced a brand new identity. That's the Can't You Hear Me brand. What the colors we use, what our logo looks like, everything. All of that was the product of the mind of one of our interns who's a senior in college right now at Loyola. And she did just a fantastic job, literally taking the bull by the horns. Yeah.
Bravo. Yes.
Completely above and beyond, the scope of what we had asked for.
Right.
Just all kinds of additions of, and I thought about this too. And what if we start adding new content that is blog based, that supplements, the storylines. And
I'm sure our listeners are seeing and hearing that as well. If you follow the Can You Hear Me LinkedIn page or whatever, I mean, we have the podcast like this, but in the middle, they came up with, hey, why don't you all, to create new content, interview each other and talk about things. And they're releasing that kind of as an addendum to the actual podcast that we're doing too. And that was all, that was really them being, the really creative problem solvers. Like I was saying, I wanted to say one other thing about the advice from Tessa, and that is listening closely to your, and I think we're going to talk about listening later too. That people thinking, oh, are they repeating themselves? No, we're trying to drive a point home, because sometimes you think you know what people want, but you really have to listen to what, let's say, leaders want or your bosses want. Or sometimes you have to listen and they may not be as clear as you'd like them to be. And sometimes you're like, should I be, if it comes down to doing more work or setting yourself apart, like we're talking about, we're not talking about, running yourself into the ground. We're simply talking about looking for the gap, the opportunity. Oh, I think they were saying that. And the second point was about seeking input from other departments, because that is collaborative. And sometimes people work in such big silos. Are like, well, I just do this. Well, I just do that. Every time I've been part of a successful organization, whether it was working full time or whether it was consulting, people were like, listen, we all have our job description. We know that. But when push comes to shove, we're all a team and we got to get the job done and we got to help each other out. So to those 2 points, I say, spot on.
And thanks for bringing those up. In particular, listening. I appreciate that you honed in on that right away, because listening is something, I don't know, no matter how long I've been working, I am constantly reminded to close my mouth and open my ears. Just me personally. Like it is, those are the moments when I learn the most. Asking questions certainly elicits good responses, but just allowing someone, even after the first question you've asked, just allowing them to keep going. The things that we learn from those exchanges, if we had just kind of bulldozed in and kept flapping our lips and our gums on our own, we never would have learned those things. It's a lifelong skill, or in development skill, as I'll characterize it. You never stop developing your skills when it comes to listening. So great reminder, something that I tell myself almost every day, to be quiet and listen more. And those are good days when I can't remember to do that.
And I was just trying to make sure that I was listening to you talk about that experience the whole time, because I'm a talker. I love to talk and share things with people. And I too need to remind myself especially when you're trying to assess things for clients or colleagues, whatever the case is, just listen.
Yeah.
Take some notes, mental notes, real notes, whatever it is, and then have something to add.
I have noticed that younger, very eager professionals also love to be problem solvers, and that's what we want to see, right? And diving in to act on the things that they heard is a natural reaction. It's instinctual almost, right?
Absolutely.
So the advice here, just underscoring the listen closely guidance, is also specifically geared toward younger professionals. You'll be even more valuable if you resist the urge to act right away on the first few things you heard and listen to the whole story or the whole challenge that's being laid out for resolution before you move into action mode, even though we love to see get up and go and eagerness, to pitch in. Just remember, you still get the opportunity to do that, but first dedicate your energy to listening and hearing the whole situation. Because what you do in response to that understanding or with that understanding will be just that much more valuable, I should say.
Collect as much information as you can. That's what listening is. It's sitting there, hearing what people's pressure points are, where their maybe weak spots are, blind spots, I should say, and you're going to be able to help them better. The more you listen, the more information you get from them, the better you are going to be able to help prescribe what you need to do to move forward.
That's right. Okay, so let's move into more bits of advice that we want to share, particularly in terms of how communications and different parts of communications can help you stand out in your career and in your current position at whatever company you may be in, particularly if you are new to the working world. A lot of this will be quite useful for you guys. So we wanted to share. We've talked to people who are relatively new out there in the working world, especially in the marketing industry. And Rob and I have also organized, collected our own reflections. So we're going to run through those now.
Mm-hmm.
So the first is a big one. It's also probably one of the more time consuming. It is to intentionally build your LinkedIn presence on a daily basis. As you can imagine, if you are new to the working world, your network on LinkedIn is going to be much smaller starting out. And that's normal. That's totally, you would expect that. I see lots of folks right now who are seniors in college who we're helping to mentor, spending time with, who have not yet built their networks very much at all. They may have 50 connections on LinkedIn. Well, I think in your first 3 months as being a professional, setting yourself a goal for increasing your network to at least 300 is a very doable goal, especially if you work on it every day. So Rob, let's talk about some of the best ways to build your LinkedIn, expand your LinkedIn meaningfully and intentionally on LinkedIn. I see you doing something that I love, so I'm going to highlight that.
Okay.
You share a video of yourself every day with a thought for the day.
Every week, yeah. Once a week.
Is it every week? It's so often.
I mean,
I see it a lot, and it's great content. So tell us about that. What inspired you to do that?
Well, first of all, we had an episode many episodes ago about LinkedIn and algorithms and things like that. So there are a few things people need to be really mindful of in terms of LinkedIn, and I've learned a lot of this from you, frankly, Eileen. And that is the constant drumbeat of original content. It's okay to repost what other people do because then you're building a network and you're supporting somebody and maybe they'll support you. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying if you want to grow your network, LinkedIn's going to reward you by putting out original content that is your own. And then I started thinking about all the advice that I would give my clients. So I started doing this. I put them out on Thursday. I've done it on Wednesday. I've done it on Friday, but I try to keep a pretty normal cadence. And I decided, okay, I've done video for years. I know what I need to say. I always tell all my clients, you need to be incorporating video wherever you can because people will watch it more frequently. And then based on other experiences we have with clients, you don't want to do a 2.5 or 3 or 5 minute opus on whatever topic it is. And so I was like, what I'm going to do? I'm going to take little bits and pieces of my career, some of the things I've done in terms of being a communicator, and I'm going to give you 30 good seconds. It's like one thought. And here's just something to think about today. And it's not really meant to sort of like, on occasion, I might put the website below if anybody ever wanted to have a follow-up conversation, but I'm not sitting there trying to like, hey, call me at or email me. It's just like, here's a thought. This, and it's showing my subject matter expertise and it's giving you just a little idea. Is it going to like blow your socks off? Probably not. Is it going to be additive? Is it like, whoa, I didn't think about that. That's a really good thing to think about. That was my goal. And now I've done like 10 or 12 of them and I do them once a week, as I mentioned, and I've developed a good cadence. And much like we come up with ideas for Can You Hear Me in advance, I'm sitting there like, all right, 2, 3, 4 out. Where am I going to be that week? Where am I going to be that Thursday? I'm going to talk about this that time. Or I'm going to be, I was just, back in March, it was timely because I was at a friend's charity golf tournament. I was working in Palm Springs for like 4 or 5 days. And I was, I had palm trees and a lake behind me, and I was talking about doing something bigger than yourself, supporting friends, caring about charity and supporting your friends who do it as well. That was my thing that I shared back in March. and it had value. And so anyway, that was just the thing you were asking about. That's kind of how it all came about.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's a number of things that stand out about your example that I'll point out, I guess. You're using video, which is a core expertise of yours. So you're taking the opportunity to show off that core expertise. That's great. You're also showing how great you are on camera, which, not everyone knows that about you. There's plenty of people in lots of markets who do, but in this new kind of iteration of your professional career, you're showing that off. And that's a big thing that you bring to the table. So in addition to that, people are engaging with that content. I see it. They like it. So the more you do it and the more consistent your cadence is, the greater your engagement levels become. And sometimes it can feel like you're talking, into an empty forest and there's absolutely no one there listening to you. But the more you keep at it, and this is what the advice for particularly new professionals, the more you keep at it, the more people will pay attention. And the third thing, or maybe it's the fourth, I don't know, I've lost count. The thing that comes through in your content that you post weekly, Rob, is your personality, which is wonderful. So really engaging, people can just, you're a very likable person. So utilizing this video aspect on LinkedIn is a great way for you to help people get to know you. So this is advice that everyone can follow. Find the thing that you're really good at. It might be on video. It might not. It might be graphics, if that's the thing you're awesome at. And you're really
might be
creative.
An article. It might be
write your own lengthy article. Long form does really well on LinkedIn, but just commit to doing it on a regular basis so that, as Rob said, it's something original that's coming straight from you. And on the other days of the week, make sure that you pop in there at least once, even if it's 15 minutes, you're on there, you're liking, you're commenting on other people who maybe you're following because you admire them, or they're within the industry where you want to advance. So you're kind of making them aware of you, and then share, like I said, and share their content, comment on their content, and take the step of looking at when LinkedIn recommends to you other professionals who you might like to know or who are similar to your profile. Or there's all different things that they tee up to you. Spend 5 minutes going through that and write a personal connection and grow your network. I've set a goal to grow my network this year by another 1,000 people. Now that's a lot, right? That's like 100. Yeah, that's less than 100 a month, but still, it's a lot. And to do that, I am spending time intentionally every day, reaching out, sending content, messages, things like that, out to people who I want to know for different reasons. And every time I notice that someone who isn't directly connected to me commented on something that I posted, or a comment that I left on another person's post, or something on LinkedIn, if they're not connected to me, I send them an invitation to connect request as soon as I can. So it's just being very aware of activity and intentional of your time that you spend on LinkedIn and putting that into your calendar.
And I will say this about you. You have the Harbinger Group LinkedIn, you have the Eileen Rochford LinkedIn, we have the Can You Hear Me podcast LinkedIn page, and you really need to think about it instead of, oh, they're telling me to find the time. Like I'm a list maker. I write a list, I cross them off when I get them done. And when it's time to do the video thing that we were talking about, I write that down on a Thursday if I'm doing it on a Thursday, or if it's spend time on LinkedIn. You need to set aside that time just like you would for anything else, because if you say, well, I'm going to try to find the time, and then there's 5 minutes or 2.5 minutes or whatever the case is, I find myself, you are so good at what you're talking about just then about spending the time and doing that a lot of times it's a nudge to me, like, hey, Rob, comment on this or do that or whatever, and what's up with the Harbinger Group? What's up with Eileen? It doesn't have to be related to what we're doing together here on the podcast. It could just be me supporting you and, you supporting me. Yeah. But your presence is sometimes for me a great motivator, like, oh, I got to catch up there. Oh, that person commented on something we did, and Eileen, and I need to respond, just spend that time doing it. And the last thing I'll say, because I know we got to move on to some of the other great advice we have here, is you were talking about building the audience. I have a dear friend of mine who is an attorney, and he writes about PCB litigation, very specific stuff. He puts out lawsuits, or he puts out opinions about them, and it starts off and 1 or 2 people are liking it, and I'm one of the 2 people, and that was several months ago, and all of a sudden it's like 7 to 10 and 10 to 12, and sometimes maybe a couple of dozen. I can see him naturally growing his network, even though when you first started doing it, nobody was commenting because you didn't have a presence. He didn't have a presence. Now he's building it. It's not, unless you go viral for some reason, it's going to be incremental growth, and you can't get dissuaded because 500 people didn't like what you said.
Yeah, that's an excellent example. Thank you for sharing that. It's kind of like the tortoise and the hare, right?
Yeah.
You just got to be patient. Yeah, do the work and you'll get it.
So we could talk about that for probably another 30 minutes. And maybe at some point we'll be like, hey, let's focus on LinkedIn again, because that's where so many people are spending their time professionally. But we do need to move on. And this next one's fairly simple, Eileen, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do it. And the next thing that we talk about when you want to, stand out at work is make sure that you ask for what you want and what you need. Yes.
It's the best advice I was ever given. And I'm so sad that I can't even recall who gave it to me, but it made a massive, massive impression. And since then, every person I've ever managed or mentored, it's one of the first things I say to them when we're getting to know each other. And especially in, kind of like that, one-on-one meetings and reviews. Ask for what you want and tell us what you need to be successful. Mm-hmm. They're not always going to know everything, especially, younger folks in their careers won't know, but you probably have a sense whether you realize it or not. So asking for what you want. Sometimes that applies to, I feel very strongly that my contributions in this organization warrant a raise maybe bigger than the one you got, or maybe it's not even within the raise cycle, but you've done something tremendous.
That's a tough conversation.
If that's what you feel is right,
you express it,
and you've really reflected on it, go and ask for it. I've definitely done that a number of times in my career, and it paid off big time, literally. So, especially to younger folks, and I will say younger women, ask for what you want, ask for what you deserve. You have so much worth and value, so make it known. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of what you need, if you need more time on an assignment, if you need some time off because something happened, in your life, just ask for it. You're going to be a better part of the team by doing so. Muscling through when you're sick, muscling through when you've had a tragedy, it's just not a good choice, and don't let anybody kind of tell you otherwise. Take that time. It's your time. You deserve it. And by creating space for the things that you need, when you come back, you're going to be just better in your job. So, great reminder.
I think you would agree as a boss extraordinaire yourself. It's nobody wants to miss a deadline. You see people like, oh, they missed a deadline. It just makes you look bad as an organization, right?
Yeah.
But if I say to you, Eileen, I'm having this, and this, I'm not going to make that deadline. You're going to be like, all right, how are we all going to pick it up? What are we going to do to solve that problem? If you know on the front end as the boss, you're going to be you're going to show a lot more grace than you would if somebody tells you, 3 hours after the deadline, oh, this and this and this happened, and that's why I missed it, because then you all look bad. So just ask for what you want, ask for what you need. Yep. Simple as that.
Pay attention so that you're asking far ahead of a need to change a deadline. That's the only caveat I'll put on that. Totally. Asking at the last minute is just not okay.
No bueno.
It's just truly not. So stay ahead of things. And if you can see down the line, these things aren't lining up. We're going to need to move these two priorities down and this one priority up. And we're going to move this deadline. Put those pieces together and be the person who raises the flag. Yeah. Yep. All right. So our next piece of advice of how to stand out at work is the lack of time face to face. So in this age of the constant virtual meeting, it can be really hard to get face to face time, I should say, like real, you're in front of me, face to face time.
Exactly. As opposed to FaceTime, which is also virtual. Yeah,
exactly. So with your colleagues, your mentors, people higher up in your organization, yet that time together it's just enormous, the impact it can have on your career. So my guidance here is be the person to initiate some time physically together in the same place, if this is possible. I know not every job it's possible.
Of course.
But if it's not, substitute it with just one-on-one coffee time in your own private. It has to be video-based, so it is, but at least you're getting together privately without full teams, and you're getting the benefit of getting to ask them things that maybe you wouldn't ask in a formal project or business-based meeting. It's just social time. Let's get together. Let's have lunch. Let's have coffee. Let's get to know each other as human beings and establish a bond that couldn't be there otherwise. And you'd be surprised right now. I'm seeing people do this. And I'm usually, I've got a pretty packed schedule and my life's a little full. But when I'm being asked to spend time, whoever it may be, whether it are, people who are in college who are asking for some career advice, whether it's people in other organizations or nonprofits who are just wanting, to see maybe if my network can help them. They ask to have a meal, and I realize I'm dying to do that. That's going to be so much fun. Yes, let's go do it. Whereas, the last past couple of years, I wouldn't have prioritized something like that as much. But now things are changing. So take advantage of it. People want to be together. You'll score points because it's flattering when someone asks you to go spend some social time. Honestly, it is. And you think that those higher ups in your organization don't have time for it, but you would be surprised how they'll make time. It really makes you stand out. So, and I remember
deterred. Don't be deterred by, it won't work now or whatever. But and you're not going to be a pest about it. But if you don't let one time like, oh gosh, they said no, so that means no forever. It means people are busy. Mm-hmm. And there might be another time where there is a moment, or, you follow up with them again and maybe that works or doesn't work. But then they're like, hey, I remember we were talking about going to have a coffee together. Let's, do it here or there. And I've always been way better like in person than I've been on the phone. Video meetings are fine,